So we took 40 e-pills between three of us in 48 hours. I couldn't get happy for like the next 2 weeks. When I got back, I was so depressed. I felt so hopeless. I was so afraid to go out in public. I was just like hiding out. My phone was off. You know, that stuff can be real dangerous. And, you know, the reason they call it ecstasy is because it makes you feel ecstatic. You feel like as soon as you take it, if it's good stuff, you know exactly why they named it ecstasy. The only problem is it destroys all of your serotonin.
That's a good lesson for anyone who takes time off, whether it's because of an addiction or because maybe they already recovered, but it's been a few years since they did something to get back into stuff slowly. One of the keys is to have some camaraderie, some oxytocin, some endorphin, as we know from Dr. Umhau, that gets released when you have training partners or when you're doing something with other people that you enjoy. So the routine thing is just a recurring theme for me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevation Recovery Podcast, your hub for addiction recovery strategies, hosted by Chris Scott and Matt Finch.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 245 of Elevation Recovery. My name is Matt Finch, and I'm joined today with my co-host and good friend, Chris Scott. Good to see you, man. It looks like the sun is probably out behind you, although I can't tell. It's super cloudy here, super overcast. We got some fall weather finally.
Yeah, those are real trees behind me, I promise. I got my real cactus that I bought on a whim.
It's not a Zoom background?
No, not a fake staging thing, not a Zoom background. And this is probably the perfect time of day to do this. I actually just ran some sprints. I had forgotten about my old routine, which was to ride my bike down to the marina, which is about a mile away, just kind of a leisurely bike ride. Because when I'm sitting a lot doing work or whatever, I end up, my hamstrings get tight. And so the bike ride kind of loosens up the hamstrings and the hips a little bit. Then I do some stretches, and then I kind of run, I would say run sprints, but I actually run really slow for like the first 5. They're not really sprints. I run back and forth. I do like, running with my knees super high as I can get them. And then I'll run kicking my heels back as high as I can do that. Do some stretches, make sure I don't pull a hamstring, because I actually watched one of my good friends pull his hamstring while sprinting back when we both worked in finance in Atlanta. We were in Piedmont Park, and we started off cold, and he yelled at the top of his lungs and fell down, and it was a pretty looks painful. So I don't want to do that. And I don't push myself in ways that might cause injury, because that's, or at least not intentionally. So anyway, I do some sprints, and, I get to the point where everything loosens up, and it probably takes me like about 10 to get there. But really, as I said, the first few are not real sprints. They're just me going from stiff to loose. And then I'll usually do 4 or 5 at like full capacity. And it feels so good to get to that level where you're pushing your body as fast as you can. And I'm not a championship sprinter. I just learned in the last few years how to actually sprint, using your hands like that, getting the most out of your upper body as well. And, how to like start, you kick off on one foot, and at the same time, you use the other hand to go forward. So, I'm always trying to improve in various things, but there's no feeling quite like running at your fastest, even if it's not the fastest that you could run if you trained like that every day, but reaching your maximum speed. And it feels really good. And it's a different kind of endorphin high from, say, running at distance or even swimming or boxing. I feel like there's value to cross training. And, I was a competitive swimmer in college, and I swam some laps last week in the pool out here, which is getting cold. I love it. But it's so strange how my cardio capacity for swimming is not nearly what my cardio capacity is for boxing, or probably even for riding a bike. It's my lats and my arms were like filled with lead. I feel like someone had injected me with lead after swimming like 20 laps, which is hilarious, because our warm-ups would sometimes be 40 or 80 laps back when I was a competitive swimmer. And I don't think I could even finish that at this point. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I just did some sprints, some cross training, try to make use of the weather. It's a little cooler, which I really appreciate being in Savannah. It's nice to not have to wash all my clothes every time I go outside. And honestly, even in the winter, even if it gets down to 45, which it doesn't really get much past, below 45 here, maybe a couple days. But the colder the better. I feel like we evolved to exercise in all types of weather. And so I'm always thinking to myself, cold shock proteins, or in the winter when it's 100 degrees, I'm out there not trying to push myself into a heat stroke, but I'm thinking heat shock proteins. So I try to do different things and cross train throughout the seasons.
That's crazy. You're 3 hours ahead of me in California. You just got done doing your high intensity interval training, cross training stuff. Not directly after this, but shortly after this, I'm going to go for an ocean swim with my sister, Callie Rose Finch. And I haven't hung out with her. Well, I guess I hung out with her right before vacation because she watched Papaya while we were gone. But she brought it up when we came back from vacation. She's like, hey, let's start going swimming every single Tuesday. She has a swimming pool. I have a swimming pool too, which I never use. It's like a big community apartment complex pool. It's a really big, nice pool. It's just, I hate chlorine just for whatever reason. And, I swim in pools sometimes, but the ocean's a mile away. So I'm going to go utilize that. And I'm not sure what the water temperature is. I'm hoping like the colder, the better, because I don't know what happened last night. I was like tossing and turning, which is so atypical for me. And so once I go jump in that ocean, and hopefully the sun will come out too, because a lot of days the sun has been breaking through by around 2 p.m. And that's like a new thing, like every single Tuesday, that's going to be a few things. Number one, exercise therapy. Number two, it's going to be circuit training because I'm not just going to swim. There's a beach there, a long beach. And next time you visit, I have to take you to the dog beach, man. Even though you don't ever bring your dogs because of the hassle with bringing them on airplanes and all that kind of stuff. It's Papaya. You just bring her right on your seat on the airplane for $100. But there's a dog beach and it goes down east to west, Ocean Beach, north to south. It's probably maybe a half mile. But then when you go east to west from the ocean, going east away from the coast, there's this long dog beach that just goes and goes and goes, and it parallels the San Diego River. And there's a big, huge, long jetty. You can see all these boats coming out. So now I get to look forward to every Tuesday getting not only swimming, but jogging along the beach. There are fire pits there, probably every 100 feet or so. And then so I'll stop at the fire pits and do incline push-ups. So imagine, get there, go for a little walk on the beach to warm up, maybe 5 minutes, then pick up the pace, do some hard sand, the wet sand jogging on the way there. And then on the way back towards the main lifeguard tower, go on the soft sand, which is much more of a workout. And it feels really, really good, especially when it's warm out and you got that warm sand. Stop on a few fire pits to do incline push-ups. Then get back to the kind of main lifeguard tower parking area. And then I'll be warm and sweaty and got a good endorphin rush. Then run out and jump into the ocean, get all that sweat off. The water, just like the hotter you get and the more sweaty you get, the sweatier you get. Oh, just jumping in that ocean and cooling off this time of year. It's just like, I'm alive. I feel so good. So and then days where it's sunny. So you're getting grounding therapy, exercise therapy, ozone therapy, swimming therapy in the negative ions and salt water, plus connection, which was the last episode you and I did. I'm like looking at myself in the third person, but family and my sister. So we're going to have fun catching waves together. And that's exactly what we were talking about. So, building these new habits, because this time of year, I do not go swimming in the ocean unless I go with someone else. Back in the day, I was a fish. You couldn't stop me. I would ditch college. I would ditch high school. Sometimes I would call in sick from work. I would do so many things because I was that obsessed with the ocean. Nowadays at 42, way busier, have a family and everything. Now I actually need somebody to go like, okay, I'll go do it because it's more fun that way. I've been in the ocean by myself for thousands of times, most likely. So yeah, dude, exercise is great. And also real quick, when you were saying about not pushing yourself to get injured, in my early addiction recovery, I'd say the first 3.5 years even, you remember how long my addiction was and how many drugs I did, and just so severe. So one of the things I did, like you, was lots of exercise, lots of regular, almost daily, rigorous exercise, a lot of times out in the sunlight. But I would often injure myself. In fact, that's when I went through my 3 years on and off of chronic pain, shoulder pain, chronic neck pain, and other things would come up too. One of the reasons was, the TMS thing, which we've talked about on many episodes now. But another thing was I would just push myself. I would push myself too hard at the gym. I'd push myself too hard at surfing, and whatever exercise I was doing, in my early 30s, I was like psychotic as far as like wanting to get that rush. It feels so good now to have rebuilt my brain over all these years. So now I don't feel the need to go nuts on exercise. And a lot of people can really screw their progress up, wanting to get back into exercise after a period of, not doing it. Say they're quitting drinking or drugs, starting to exercise again, liking it, but then wanting to get back to where they were in the past too quickly. And then as a result, injuring themselves. Then as a result, they can't exercise at all. Then as a result, they start drinking again because they feel like shit, or they start popping opioid pills again, etc.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and I agree about not injuring yourself. It seems that a lot of people get overly ambitious, myself included. And even after a period of time off, I used to do bench all the time. That's all I did back when I had chicken legs in high school. I was obsessed with bench, and I ignored the squats. And I never really discovered deadlifting or I mean, I did squats occasionally. I was familiar with the proper movement, but I never did deadlifts until after I quit drinking. And I very gradually worked myself up from, I've always been a pretty big guy and fairly strong, but I could barely budge like 250 on deadlift when I started. And then like a year and a half later, through literally putting 5 or 10 pounds more on each week, I got up to close to 600 pounds with the deadlift. But when I switched to MMA, and I think I touched on this the last time we talked, or maybe the time before that, when I moved to Savannah, I no longer had a group of guys who wanted to deadlift all the time. So I had to find camaraderie, and that was found in MMA. And I also had an inherent interest in getting back into martial arts, and I felt like I was going to plateau. I didn't want to do deadlift competitions or risk really injuring myself or doing any of that. So I was like, all right, we'll switch gears for a while. But then when I came back into building my strength up, I lost a lot of weight for when I did a lot of boxing and started to do Muay Thai stuff. I went from probably about 220 down to like close to 200 pounds. And so I wanted to gain some muscle back so that I could retain my skills and newfound mobility, but also be strong and start doing more wrestling and jujitsu stuff. So I got back into deadlifting, and I was used to warming up with 315 and just going right from 315 to 405, 405 to 495, and right. So literally 3 sets in, I'm at almost 500 pounds. And I started to do that, and I felt creaky, and I was like, this isn't good. This is how people blow their backs out. So I had to kind of go back to the beginning, swallow my pride. And I've realized I didn't really lose much strength, but I lost some muscle fitness, and some of the neuromuscular connections had been a bit rusty compared to where they were before. So it took time for me to get back into it. I think that's a good lesson for anyone who takes time off, whether it's because of an addiction or because maybe they already recovered, but it's been a few years since they did something to get back into stuff slowly. But I think another thing you mentioned there, one of the keys is to have some camaraderie, some oxytocin, some endorphin, as we know from Dr. Umhau, that gets released when you have training partners or when you're doing something with other people that you enjoy. So the routine thing is just a recurring theme for me. In fact, if I text a few of my friends here in Savannah, if I said, you want to do the routine, I don't even have to, it can be all lowercase letters. They know what I'm talking about. They know I'm talking about the Saturday routine where we go have yoga, or we go do yoga, and then we have really spicy Indian food, and then we sit in the sauna, and then go back and take respective naps at our houses. And like, that's just the best way that I can find to start a Saturday. And then you feel super refreshed, when you wake up from that nap on Saturday afternoon, you're ready to go for the rest of the weekend. But there are other routines as well. I realized that even though I had camaraderie with MMA, I was missing some of the camaraderie with lifting. Mm-hmm. So I asked one of my friends from that yoga routine, one of my best friends down here, if he wanted to start lifting on Tuesdays and Thursdays with me. And, he works for the Coast Guard, and our schedules sometimes misalign, but generally speaking, we've done a pretty good job of coordinating those gym sessions. And when we do, I get a much better workout because I'm not just doing the same old circuit that I'm used to. I'm actually still very bad at power cleans. I never mastered cleans, and he did CrossFit for a long time. So he's showing me stuff on cleans. I'm showing him stuff on deadlifts. And then it's just much more rewarding that way. So in the same way that you are swimming with your sister, it's better to do stuff with other people than to do it alone. And if you're an introvert like I am, or like you are, I often say I'm an outgoing introvert because I enjoy other people. I know how to be outgoing. I know how to act like an extrovert, but ultimately I need my time to myself in order to recharge. Maybe if you're not into doing things with a huge group, and I've certainly never really been the type to do like giant exercise classes. I don't love that. But maybe find one or two people who you really connect with, and it actually will energize you, even if you are an introvert. I've found, a huge group of people will always drain me, but one or two people I really enjoy will almost always energize me.
In my last dream before waking up last night, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just tossing and turning. I think it's because I took so much maca yesterday. I got a new bag of gelatinized organic maca. And I didn't want to do the dishes, and my teaspoon and tablespoons and all those were, in the dishwasher, ready to get more loaded and finish the dishes. So I just grabbed like a little plastic utensil spoon that I had, and I just kind of dumped some in there. And then it went into the smoothie. I was like, whoa, that was kind of a lot of maca. So that's probably what kept me up last night. But anyhow, before I woke up, the last dream was I was on like a family vacation with my whole entire family, like everyone, like all my aunts, all my uncles, my parents, my siblings, cousins, everyone. And we were all sharing this big home somewhere, and it was just people everywhere. And I woke up, I was like, it was almost like a nightmare, because I've done vacations like that in the past, and I'll never do it again, where the whole family, well, not everyone, but like 8 to 12 people, sometimes even more, we'd go up to Mammoth for Christmas and have like a snowy Christmas in the mountains. And I'll never do that again, like maximum 5 or 6 people. And I'm getting my own room with Willow, or no more than like 2 or 3 people to share a room with. And because it just taxes me, even in the dream it did. One thing I wanted to say real quick too was, you might have heard of this before. It's a disorder called body dysmorphia. And when we're talking about wanting to push ourselves to like get back to a place that, we're like, oh, I want to get those muscles back, or get that muscle endurance back, or whatever it is. One of the biggest reasons that I would injure myself in early recovery is I was pushing myself so hard. Number one, probably the primary reason was to feel good, to get rid of, to rewire my brain so I didn't crave opioids or alcohol or benzos. Another big reason, perhaps tied with that or close to it, was I had body dysmorphia back then, meaning I didn't like how my body looked. And it wasn't just that I didn't like it. I would obsess over every single feature, typically from head to toe. It had to do with my face. It had to do with facial hair. It had a lot to do with physique. And so I thought that, if I just get this exact physique how I want it, get my skin and hair and everything perfect, then I'll feel comfortable in my own skin. And it just never worked, no matter what I did, no matter how, much I built muscle and took care of my health. Then it was like the next goalpost. Oh, I need to put on 10 more pounds. Oh, I need my shoulders to go back more. Oh, I need to get more work done on this tattoo. Oh, it was crazy. It was a definite disorder. I didn't know about it back then. I didn't know there was a term. I learned that it's commonly caused either in part or completely by a massive serotonin deficiency, which I got to think that probably back then I was taking lots of supplements, amino acids and herbs and stuff to boost dopamine, to boost GABA, and to boost endorphin. but I don't remember taking anything or very few things to boost serotonin. And of course, when you're, taking lots of dopamine boosters, if you don't balance it out, that can reduce your overall serotonin. And I just think genetically, through like my family history with addiction and mental health issues on both sides, I really feel like I'm just genetically, or used to be genetically predisposed to having serious serotonin deficiency syndrome. Nowadays,
That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had serious serotonin deficiency syndrome, and I don't know why. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's because I've always eaten a fair amount of meat, gotten a lot of L-tryptophan. I don't know, because my GABA was like nil, to the point where I couldn't even open my eyes in the morning without a panic attack by the time I quit drinking. And my endorphins needed help for a year after I quit drinking. I took DLPA every day for a year. I took my dopamine was a disaster. I was drinking 12 to 15 cups of coffee right after I quit drinking and before I found nutrient repair. But I remember benefiting from, say, 5-HTP and L-tryptophan, but only for about 2 weeks. And then I started feeling agitated by them, unless they were in a blend of other amino acids, in which case they were better tolerated. But I also didn't have body dysmorphia. I don't think I've ever had it. And I remember thinking, I don't know if hopefully some of the people here have seen that before and after picture on my page to join my course. On fitrecovery.com/course, there's a before and after picture, and I look pretty bad in the before picture. I probably weighed about 250. I was sloppy. I was sweaty. I looked jolly, but you could barely see my eyes because my face was fat, and I had like a under the chin thing that alcohol always gave me. Like, even if I went 2 weeks without drinking and then I had a binge, it was like the chin would just come back, and then like my eyes would be small and beady. So anyway, I was 250. I'm 220 now, because as I said, I'm trying to put some muscle on. I put some fat on. I mean, I'm a little bit older, but even back then, at the worst of the worst for my physique, objectively not good, not healthy, I remember thinking like, I look pretty good, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's because my serotonin levels were oddly not that affected. But I certainly had other imbalances. So it's interesting how everyone's different.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I just remember when you're talking about that stuff, I took a ton of ecstasy, MDMA, methamphetamines back in the day, hallucinogens too. I actually did quite a bit of ecstasy, not like a huge amount compared to the ravers and stuff, but I probably did ecstasy 25 times. And some of the times, I remember one time, and I know you got to go for a call in a few minutes, so I'll just end with this last story. I went to Leo Carrillo State Beach, which is a beautiful campground in Malibu, California, actually just north of the Malibu Pier. Just beautiful. They filmed a lot of movie scenes at this state beach. There's a beautiful right point break for surfing. It's just all-time waves. And I think it was it was right around this time of year. It was either the end of October or beginning of November, somewhere right around here. We got a big south swell. So we went up there to surf, myself and two of my buddies. But when we got up there, the waves actually sucked at that particular break. We went camping. This is back in my cannabis dealing and some drug dealing days. And they did too. I brought 20 double stackers of MDMA that was cut. So it was ecstasy cut with methamphetamines, and it was cut with some other really speedy stuff. I'm not sure if it was crystal meth or ice or glass. There's all these different types. But between the three of us, we had all those 20 double stackers within 48 hours. So that's really 40 pills because they're double stacks. So we took 40 e-pills between three of us in 48 hours. I couldn't get happy for like the next 2 weeks. When I got back, I was so depressed. I felt so hopeless. I was so afraid to go out in public. I was just like hiding out. My phone was off. It was awful, man. Don't do drugs to that extent, people. If you're thinking about going big on some ecstasy or something like that, you never tried it. That stuff can be real dangerous. And, the reason they call it ecstasy is because it makes you feel ecstatic. You feel like as soon as you take it, if it's good stuff, you know exactly why they named it ecstasy. The only problem is it destroys all of your serotonin. That's why one of the reasons you feel so good, it's just like serotonin bliss. And then, when you come down off of it, I met people back in the day that had done it so much that they were like kind of vegetables, like seemed kind of brain dead or like slow, like mentally, cognitively and mentally, neurologically impaired, just totally dysfunctioning. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there. So we've talked about some of the cross training for addiction recovery, exercise, doing it with people, family, friends, out in the sunshine, and things like neurotransmitter deficiencies, and how things like serotonin deficiency can cause either in part or completely OCD, body dysmorphia, and of course, anxiety, depression, and a bunch of other things. So we keep coming back to all these things: biopsychosocial, spiritual. Today, we really focused on the bio and the social a lot, but, just keep thinking that, folks. Biopsychosocial and even environmental, spiritual, it's a proven system for addiction and also recovering from addiction, recovering from mental health disorders like my past undiagnosed body dysmorphia, which was awful. It's one of the main reasons I would continue to not only push myself at the gym too hard and injure myself, but why I would drink alcohol and take opioids, because then if I was under the influence of alcohol or opioids or benzos or some elixir combination, then I felt comfortable in my skin and I wasn't obsessing on how I thought, my subjective deficit of looks, which was just all my own focusing, because, most other people weren't saying anything like, hey man, you should really put on 10 more pounds. Oh, you know what you did if you just, got this part of your tattoo. I was the only person obsessing about, all these really small little petty, vain, egocentrical, surface level stuff.